All right, guys, welcome back to the Something Super Podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Mark.
Today we're going to do a little bit of a different spin on things. So, Mark and I have recently talked about our favorite DC villains / anti-villains, or anti-heroes in certain cases. And mine has been Godspeed for quite some time now. And Mark, yours is?
Deathstroke.
So we decided to do something different and pit them against each other. Now, after copious amounts of research on the internet, I have found no one that has actually done a proper Godspeed versus Deathstroke sort of matchup. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break down some of their superpowers, strengths, weaknesses, and then we're going to give our opinions on who we think would win in a fight. We'd also love to hear from you of who you think would win. So, Mark, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like one of the most empowering DC villain / hero / anti-hero / anti-villain, really, he's filled every role over the course of the years, has been the Terminator himself, Deathstroke. So, for Deathstroke, he, just a little bit of his backstory. Basically, he joined the military at the age of 16. He lied about his age. He went over, he fought in Korea. When he came back, he met Captain Adeline Kane. She began to see how much of a true soldier he is. So she personally decided to train him in different forms of hand-to-hand combat, including guerrilla warfare and multiple other ones. And she slowly learned that within like a year, he mastered at least, I believe it was 16 or 17 different fighting styles. So she really saw, okay, like this guy is like the real deal. Well, then the Army eventually recruited him for almost a super soldier program, kind of like Captain America. So I always call him the Rogue Captain. That's kind of my nickname for him because essentially that's the closest thing to DC's counterpart for Captain America. Now, what Slade decided to do was kind of go the opposite way. So, when he was over in Vietnam, he and his battalion actually massacred an entire city, which didn't sit right with him because, yes, while he is an assassin, he gets paid. Like, for him, that's just his job. He doesn't take it personally in a lot of cases. Don't get me wrong, some cases where it's completely personal. But for the most part, he's just doing a job and he's just getting money. So that didn't sit well with him that they massacred all these innocent people. So through the years, he takes on other contracts and things like that to where he eventually gets to a point to where he has information that other people want and they kidnap his son. So during that whole altercation, his son ends up getting his throat slit, becomes mute, and then, as you all know, he wears the eye patch. That's because he kept his whole life from his family a secret, and when Adeline Kane found out what he was doing, she shot him in the face. However, she only damaged his right eye, and because he has a healing factor due to the serum that they gave him for the Super Soldier program, he actually healed. And now he monikers the black and orange mask that we've seen in Arrow, you've seen in multiple animated series. It's half orange with the eyeball, the other half is just an emotionless black mask.
So my character, August Hart, a.k.a. Godspeed, actually started off working in the Central City Police Department with Barry Allen. He was a detective. And basically what happens is August's brother gets murdered by Black Hole, which is a supervillain gang in the Flash world. And basically, via Barry and the Speed Force Storm, August ends up getting struck by lightning. And that gives him the same powers as the Flash. Now, again, very similar to Deathstroke, his intention in the beginning is not to be evil. It's just to do his job. And him and Barry team up. They find all of the other speedsters, some of them actually being evil speedsters, and they sort of wrangle them up, and they put the ones that need to in Iron Heights, and the rest of them they bring to the Speed Force Academy. So their entire goal at the Speed Force Academy is to train everyone to be as good as the Flash, which is a fantastic goal to have, but there is an outlier, which, is August Hart, who plays good, but is actually behind the backs of everyone being Godspeed and killing off the speedsters and siphoning their speed. His entire goal, while it is justified in his opinion, is not justified in Barry's, and that's where they sort of clash. So he's killing off the young speedsters. He is taking their speed, and he is going after and hunting Black Hole. He is going after and hunting the people that worked at Star Labs because that's who he thinks actually was behind it, because they ended up stealing one of the Star Labs vans. And, it's a crazy story. But Godspeed is actually one of the newer supervillain, anti-hero characters that they've made. He's only been out for, I guess, a little over 10 years now. So, I don't know. I fell into the Godspeed trap, I guess, within the past 5 years. Learned about him, did some research on him. I love the concept. I love the fact that he's an anti-hero. And he thinks he's doing right. I love the powers that he has, which are similar but also differ from Barry. So, that's a little bit of a background on both of our characters. And I guess now what we're going to do is we're going to get into a heated debate of who would actually win in a fight. We're going to bring out some of the facts, some of the animated series, comics, live action series that they've been in, and sort of see, who would come out on top.
Yeah. As far as Deathstroke goes, I mean, if he were to face off against Godspeed, I definitely think he would be able to hold his own. He's proven that on multiple occasions that Deathstroke has gone toe-to-toe with Superman. He's gone toe-to-toe with Batman, obviously. He's gone toe-to-toe with Wonder Woman, the Teen Titans, Ra's al Ghul himself. There's just been a plethora of people that he's actually gone up against. And like I said, he doesn't care if you're a good guy. He doesn't care if you're a villain. Like, if he feels you need to be brought down or there's a contract on you, that's who it's going to be. So for this little hypothetical, let's just go with the storyline that somebody put a hit out on Godspeed. So now Deathstroke has to go and combat him. So some of the abilities that Deathstroke has is that he has an enhanced intelligence. He can actually use 90% of his brain, unlike the average human that can use only 10. He has enhanced strength, agility, and durability, along with stamina and his reflexes. So even with him having one eye, you would think that would kind of like hurt him, but the serum kind of balances that out, so it doesn't hurt him as much as you would think. He's also a skilled swordsman. He's a highly trained marksman with his military experience, and also coming from his military, he has great hand-to-hand combat. So on the terms of him actually fighting Godspeed, I feel like it would be a great combat because Godspeed is not just your everyday, hey, I just randomly got speed. He actually has a little bit of a background too as well.
Correct, yeah. So because Godspeed actually, August Hart, worked as a police officer and then worked his way up to a detective, he does have, I wouldn't say advanced, but intermediate skills hand-to-hand and intermediate skills with firearms. So again, while he's not necessarily the Terminator assassin that Deathstroke is, he does have a leg up in regards to being someone that actually has some experience with these things. Another thing that they both have is that, like you said, enhanced thought process and enhanced thinking skills. While Godspeed can't use 90% of his brain, he thinks at the same rate of speed that he would run. So because of that, that sort of gives him a slight advantage in that. But again, much like Batman, if Deathstroke had the ability to prepare for the fight, because again, we're speaking about if he had a contract, I think it would be a little bit more difficult for Godspeed to plan ahead because he's running more with anger and aggression than with a clear mind. So in that regard, I guess in their thought processes, I'm going to give the upper hand to Deathstroke in this one.
No, I would completely agree. I mean, like I said, and as you guys can learn, the more you read about him, you see him in the movies, like Deathstroke very, very rarely gets to a personal level. So he's very good with keeping a level head, making sure his thought process is thought out, and everything's going the way that he needs it to go for him to accomplish whatever task is that's put in front of him. In this case, killing Godspeed. Now, the one thing that I personally think where Godspeed would have the upper hand is, correct me if I'm wrong, but he is the only speedster that ever mastered being in two places at the same time. I know it's a feat that Barry has literally been fighting for years to try to get himself to the point to where he can do it. And it almost comes as a second nature to Godspeed when he gets his powers.
You're absolutely correct. So it's actually a strength and a weakness. Because while he is able to create a clone of himself. It's not, forever. It's not a long-lasting thing. It's more of a, let's get into this fight. I'm going to create a clone of myself to help myself, get that upper hand. And then the longer it is, currently on the field, the more pain he's in, the less speed force he's able to use. So it is sort of a detriment after a certain period of time. So again, that was actually going to be my next point, that if he were to fight Deathstroke, he's not fighting one speedster. He is fighting technically two speedsters for as long as he's able to keep his clone alive. So that is something that would throw the wrench into the gears for Deathstroke, because again, while you're preparing to fight one individual, did you prepare to fight two?
And in the case of like any other person, I would say no. However, with him being a speedster, the fact that Deathstroke has clashed with, Reverse Flash, he has clashed with the regular Flash, he's clashed with Wally and the Teen Titans. Like, he has some knowledge of how speedsters' powers work. So I believe that's something that Deathstroke would anticipate and would game plan for. Maybe not necessarily being the same speedster fighting on two different fronts, but maybe another speedster or some kind of underhanded trick like that, to where, he did train with the League of Assassins. So I feel like he has the skill set and he would have the capabilities to maybe use some misdirection, kind of like Batman does with his smoke pellets. How, boom, you drop the smoke pellet, now it doesn't matter if there's two of them if you can't see the one person you're fighting.
Oh, absolutely. So, and again, Deathstroke definitely has the upper hand in that regard as well. I think a big thing that sort of separates Godspeed from Barry or, Kid Flash, not necessarily the Reverse Flash, but my biggest thing that I like about him is he is willing to make that tough decision to kill. So that is where he's going to differ. While, yes, in the comics, Deathstroke has killed the Reverse Flash, and he has the potential to kill Barry or, Kid Flash, Wally West, any of those people. I think that August Hart works a little bit differently. Again, his powers are slightly different. He's able to siphon from the Speed Force any other speedster's power, even if he's not necessarily around them, via a gauntlet that he has. So he can continually get faster and get quicker, and his brain functions will continue to rise, and his agility and, his tactics will get quicker and faster throughout the entire fight. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind throughout the entire thing. But, again, Deathstroke does have the healing capabilities. So that's something that, again, not in most of the live action stuff that a speedster's come into contact with. And August Hart, while he is fast and one of the fastest speedsters at his most powerful, it's one of those things that, you're not really preparing for. Because, you break someone's arm, well, you're right back in it. I think Deathstroke would be one of those people that's been trained to handle an excessive amount of pain, handle, torture, handle having something, again, one of his eye was shot out. He just kind of covered it up and said, keep on fighting.
Absolutely, and I don't want to sound completely one-sided because, I do think Godspeed would actually be a good fight for Deathstroke, because first thing you have to take in consideration is, does he know the alter ego of Godspeed, or does he only know the speedster? So if he only knows the speedster, literally he could be having a conversation with Deathstroke while his other form, dressed as Godspeed, could come from behind and ambush him. Now, Deathstroke doesn't realize what's going on. That could definitely give him an upper hand. And like you said, I'm sure Deathstroke has been kind of trained to deal with those kind of pains. So for me, I feel like the way that Deathstroke would need, the strategy that Deathstroke would have to take would be, he would have to draw out the fight for as long as he can. Because as you alluded to, the longer Godspeed is running around, the more pain he's in. So if Deathstroke, his pain tolerance, can overcome Godspeed's, then at that point, that's where I feel like it would start to shift. However, with him being a speedster, I'm not sure what his top speed is. Obviously, that has to be taken into consideration, and that's something that if Godspeed wants to, right off the bat, he could probably very easily, maybe not kill Deathstroke, but at least seriously maim him.
Oh, definitely. And again, like we've said, they're fairly well matched, and I think it's because they haven't been matched up before, and there hasn't been much of a storyline or story arc to sort of dive into what would be, I guess, a fight between the two of them. They both have their super thoughts, their super brains. They both have quick reflexes, enhanced healing capabilities, but each of them in their own regard has their upper hand in certain scenarios. Again, like you said, if he was unaware that August Hart is Godspeed, he's not prepared to deal with Godspeed and have a random person off the street who is a Speed clone come from behind and attack him. But again, if he does have the time and capabilities to sort of do a little bit more research into who Godspeed actually is, who August Hart is, and what they do, maybe he would bring him somewhere that he couldn't become Godspeed. He couldn't run away. He'd take him into public and have that fight and make it a little bit more difficult.
Right, but like you said, I feel like August Hart, the fact that he's not afraid to kill, I feel like putting him in like a public environment really wouldn't change the fight. Like, I feel like if it came down to, hey, it's you or me that's going to die by the end of this, it kind of throws caring about anything else out the window. Where, yeah, I mean, Deathstroke may be able to bring him somewhere or lure him somewhere to where he has some kind of setup to actually counterbalance whatever Godspeed has going on. But I really don't think that with the caliber of people that we're talking about, I don't think it would make that much of an impact, to be honest.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with that as well. And again, another little thing that I think we had spoken about earlier in this is that, like you said, Deathstroke doesn't make anything personal, which I think is a big part of it because emotions don't play into it, which means he's usually even keel throughout the entire fight, altercation, the hunt of his next assassination victim. But August Hart's entire storyline is built on revenge. It's built on having that emotion at the helm, basically, that would sort of drive him into what I would consider madness. He allowed the Speed Force to sort of take over and drive him to be what he is now, which is, as he considers himself, the judge, jury, and executioner. He is the god of speed, which is where his name originally came from. And I think that would definitely play into it as long as Deathstroke is aware. Again, if he did his research on his target, he would be able to sort of overplay the fact that he is emotionally connected to certain things and maybe bring up the fact that his brother was murdered and get him to force out a second, Speed clone and then eventually just wear him down, and that might be the end of that fight.
Absolutely. I mean, me and you both, to bring it into the real world and kind of connect to it, is we've both trained a little bit of martial arts. So obviously, like, whether it's wrestling for me or jiu-jitsu for me or Muay Thai or anything like that for you, like, keeping your emotions in check is so key, because as soon as you start tapping into it and you get over aggressive or you get something that could literally cause you to start making some trip-ups, which is why I'm going to give the win personally to Deathstroke. Only because I feel like Godspeed would be able to contain his anger and his emotions only for so long. And I feel like once he actually started feeding off of those, that's when he's going to start making mistakes, and that's when Deathstroke would capitalize.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And again, while Godspeed is definitely one of my favorite anti-heroes, in this scenario, I'm probably going to have to give it to Deathstroke, 2-1 over Godspeed. While, I think in certain scenarios, Godspeed might have the upper hand and might be able to take the win. I think 9 out of 10 times, Deathstroke's probably going to be that guy who's going to end up killing him in the long run. But again, like we said, we would love to hear what you guys have to think, what you guys have to say in regards to this super villain, I guess, matchup. Got anything else for you, Mark?
No, that was pretty much everything that I could think of for me. Like you said, 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to give it to Deathstroke. I feel like the shorter that the fight lasts, the more it leans towards Godspeed. I feel like the longer that the fight lasts, the more it starts tilting towards Deathstroke.
Yeah, that is, the most simple way to put it. If you can end it quick, August Hart might have the upper hand, but I think Deathstroke is enough of a tactician where he could sort of elongate that fight if he needed to.
Absolutely. So, as always, guys, I'm Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And we want to thank you again for tuning in.
This is the Something Super podcast. We'll see you guys next week.